Hello fellow YouTubers, this is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music, and in this video we're going to take a look at a MIDI mock-up of the Imperial March by John Williams. So here we go. Okay, let's see how just the strings alone, we have violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello, and bass. So next, we'll go ahead and take a look at the brass. So I have it laid out as we have the brass, percussion, and strings. So the strings sort of is the foundation for the cue. And then of course you have that along with the percussion. Let's just hear the percussion by itself. And as you can see, consists of timpani, piatti, snare drum, bass drum. So let's go ahead and listen to those. And then we have the brass with the horns initially in the beginning. And then we have the trumpets, trombones, bass trombone coming in. So here's the brass. Now, the way I set it up in terms of instrumentation, there are a couple things. First of all, in terms of the reverb setup, let's go ahead and take a look at a brass track. So everything's in a stereo field. So here's how everything's laid out. We have our cellos and our basses on the right of the stage. We have our tubas and trombones, bass trombones grouped together. Then our trumpets, our horns sort of in the middle. Piatti, snare drums, timpani, bass drums sort of on the left and the back. Then your violins, 1 and 2 up front, as well as your violas. And with Vietnamere Pro, you can move your sections around like so. So you can reposition them, angle them. You can increase the stereo width, and that gives you a fuller sound. So we have basically the violas, the cellos, And then we can increase the stereo width of the cello bass. Also, you can adjust the volumes of these things. You can zoom in, and also the pan as well. So you have a lot of control. Here's your volume. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom out and see everything playing in this context. Now, in terms of individual instrumentation, the instruments that were used, let's take a look at the brass. For the horns, I used the Vienna Symphonic Instruments. And as you can see, we have the A4 patch. So we're actually playing 4 horns in this patch. The score calls for 2, actually 4 altogether, 1, 2, and then 3, 4. So I used the same patch for horns 3 and 4. So it is a little heavy on the horns, and we use the staccato articulation for the horns. For the trumpets, did the same thing using the VSL, Vienna Symphonic Library. Used the Marcato patch, and this patch actually has 3 trumpets, and then the score called for 2 trumpets and then a third one. And the third one I used the same patch, so it's a little heavier possibly, but you can adjust the volumes between the two to have this one maybe twice as loud as this one. You can do volume adjusts. And then use the same patch for trumpet 3. And then for the trombones, I used another VSL patch, Marcato, and it actually has 3 trombones, although the score called for 2. So it's a little heavy on the brass, but again, you can control that with volume. In the bass trombone, another Marcato patch, and this time we're just doing 1 bass trombone as opposed to more than 1. And then there was no actual tuba in the score at this point. And then moving along to percussion. For timpani, use the Vienna Symphonic Library timpani, basically just a standard patch. And then for the piatti, used a VSL patch as well. Actually, in this case, it was the synchron cymbals. So I used they actually have a piatti in the synchron percussion package, also by VSL. And then for the snare drum, we have the regular VSL percussion there's your snare drum patch where the snares are on. You can also put snares off if you so choose. And then the bass drum patch also came from VSL. And there you have it. There's your bass drum in the general drum toms patch. It also has taiko, tambourine, and a few others. And then in the strings patch, I initially went with the orchestral patches in VSL, but the synchron strings seem to fit better. The staccato patch there. So for violin 1, we did the synchron violin 1. Violin 2, in synchron they actually have violin 1 and violin 2. So here you have second violins. So that way you're not getting any cross cancellation because you're using a set of different violins. And the same with the viola that came from synchron as well, using the room mix and staccato. And then the cello, synchron as well, using the room mix and the staccato patch, because as you look at the score, you see we've got a lot of triplets and eighth notes. So, and then the bass. For consistency, I went ahead and went with the synchron strings as well, which is again by VSL. It's their latest package. And so that pretty well summarizes what went on in constructing the Midi Mockup. What I did is I took the original score and then I keyed it in. And then I did a lot of copying and pasting because, as you can see, this rhythmic figure is pretty pervasive throughout the score. And if there's interest out there, I can do the next group of measures in part 2, or we can leave it here just in part 1 for the first 8. But it actually pretty well runs its course in 20 measures. So it's a little close to halfway done. And again, a lot of cutting and pasting, and you can do the whole thing. I did a little bit of tweaking once I imported the MIDI into the DAW to make the staccato stand out a little bit, especially when we got into the trumpets, the trombones, and the basses. I had to shorten the notes to make them sound staccato, even though I was using a staccato patch. So that pretty well wraps up this part 1. And if you guys want, I'll do part 2 and do some more measures, possibly get up to measure 20, which is basically the main thrust of the Imperial March. So this is Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music. If you like this video, please click like if you found it informative. And if you have any questions or comments, then please post those. And if you wish to be notified of upcoming videos, then please subscribe. So Bill McFadden from Tone Pure Music, signing off.